Good afternoon, students. The theme of today's lecture is pragmatics of translation. That's a continuation of the previous lecture. The plan contains the following questions: transmission of a communicative effect of the original in translation, the pragmatic adaptation of the text in translation, and the categories of translation according to a pragmatic task of a translator. In a number of cases, the pragmatic purpose of translation is in the achievement of the desirable influence or communicative effect on the receptor of translation. The communicative effect which must be reproduced in translation may be determined the dominant function of the original. Having read the works of Shakespeare, Dickens, and Rational Kazakh, a reader must feel all the talent of the author of the original, understand why he is considered to be a great writer or a poet. If a translator manages to achieve it, we can speak about the adequate reproduction of the original's communicative effect. The dominant function of scientific and technical materials is the description and explanation of instructions on the use of objects of reality. If the receptor of these texts can carry out a desirable experiment or fulfill given operations on a certain equipment, then the communicative effect is considered to be achieved. Sometimes the scientific information given in translation is more comprehensible, and in this case we say that translation carries out its basic pragmatic task even better than the original. The most difficult task for a translator is to provide the necessary response from a receptor. Here, the translator should know individual peculiarities of the translation's receptor. Only knowing his character and the psychological state, it is possible to say what his emotional or behavior response will be on a given statement. As a rule, a translator doesn't put the task of achieving the given communicative effect of the original, but if it is put, then its execution requires pragmatic adaptation of the text. So the execution of achieving communicative effect of the original on the receptor requires pragmatic adaptation of the text. Such adaptation, for example, of the text of an advertisement must provide the sales of goods being advertised. So it leads to making a new parallel translation text which takes into account specific tastes of future customers. A great role is played by differences in historic and the cultural background of different language communities and customs and traditions. It stands to reason that the natives of the tropical island can hardly be impressed by the statement that something is white as snow. Their relations are cooling. Cooling may be understood that their relations are becoming heater, especially for people living in tropical or subtropical regions. It seems imperative that translation should involve a kind of pragmatic adaptation to provide the preservation of the original's communicative effect. This adaptation must ensure that the text conveys the same attitude to the reported facts as the original text does. In some cases, according to a pragmatic task of concrete translation act, a translator can give a simplified translation of a text. As you see here, two examples are given on the screen. He is as cool as a cucumber. Он хладнокровен, как огурец. The translation is not true. That's why the translator gives in the brackets the explanation of the given English sentence. Он совершенно спокоен. Or another example, a miss is as good as a mile. Промах так же хорош, как миля. That's not true. And the brackets, the correct translation is given. Чуть-чуть не считается, как раз уж промахнулся, то все равно не насколько. The task appears when the receptor must be acquainted with the main content of the text in a very short period of time. Such simplified translation can be considered as a preliminary stage in the process of translator's work on preparing the full text of translation. In connection with it, we can say about translations of three different categories, and each of them answers certain types of requirements. These categories are draft translation, summarizing, working translation, that's regular translation, and official translation, ready to be published. Translations of the first category are carried out on the level of indication of a situation. That's why they transmit what the original is about, and sometimes have omissions and departures from the TL norm. Translations of the second category transmit the subject logical content of the original on the level of description of a situation, follow the norms of TL, but may be non-adequate, and the reproduction of the connotational aspect of the original, and use some explanations because of the loss of information. Translations of the third category give communicatively equal texts in the original and TL, reproducing all the functionally relevant elements of the original content, including its pragmatic potential.